how to talk to your kids about dating after divorce. Yay! Welcome to Mended Light. I'm co-founder and CEO Alicia Decker, and this is
co-founder and clinical director Jonathan Decker.
That needs no introduction because he is in every single video.
They're like, oh, this guy again.
We are here to talk today about how to talk to your kids about dating after divorce.
Are you about to break up with me?
Not today.
Okay. But you've been divorced.
I have been divorced.
So cheerful.
So when we were dating, I had a child, small child.
Mm-hmm.
He was adorable, still adorable.
Yep.
A lot taller.
You were divorced. We were dating.
So you're sharing your professional perspective, but we're also sharing our real life
Our
perspective.
story, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Who wants to start?
You
Are
start.
you starting?
No, you've got the lived-in experience. I'll
lived-in
drop some
experience.
clinical nuggets here and there, but
Okay, so it's totally going to depend on your circumstances, on your kid's age. There's so many factors. So you need to do what works best for you and what you feel comfortable with, and keep in consideration your kid's needs too, and balance those, right? Like as a parent, we're always trying to balance like what are our needs with what our kids' needs are. And if we go too far in any direction, that's where it gets unhealthy.
well, we have to consider the age of the kids,
Right.
if they're adult children or if they're
Right.
teenagers or if they're kids. And then also there's extremes, right? There's the extreme of not telling them at all.
Anything.
Not telling them at all anything, or like second date, you're now making introductions, right?
Right,
Which I think is another extreme. I love when people say, well, like, we're going to date for a while before I introduce you to my kid. Like, we're going to ease into that and see where this
Right.
goes, because kids can get attached and
Right.
disattached and attached and disattached to many suitors. And
Yeah, so my son was quite young, right? And so he understood his dad and I were divorced. He wasn't going to understand, like, here's mom's friend and here's a different friend and where did that last friend go?
because you had a few dates.
Occasionally. I dated occasionally. But
Never had to pay for a meal.
But I did not introduce my son to someone unless marriage was on the table. Like, unless that was in consideration. Not, oh, we're going to get married, because for me, that was too far down the road.
Right, but could this be going that way?
But unless we were considering marriage, like, they were never meeting my child, right? And that's what worked for me, and that was my morals and my values. So I didn't date unless he was with his dad, right? Or if he was somewhere else, I didn't go out on dates.
Her son, not her date. She didn't go on dates with her dates and their fathers.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. This is why I keep you around.
Yeah, state the obvious.
So there was a bit of a funny moment. You and I had been friends for a while. We'd been dating for a few months, and I was actually going to Arizona to meet you because we lived in different parts of the country. We were meeting up in Arizona.
Here's the funny moment.
So that I could meet his family. And I was bringing my son with me, which I knew that meant, like, marriage is a possibility. This is on the table. But I realized as I'm driving there to Arizona, it's like a 6-hour drive or something, and my 3-year-old's in the back seat, that I had never had the conversation with you about what this meant to me. And I started panicking.
Yeah.
And I'm not a panicky person.
No.
I don't panic. I don't get anxiety. I was panicking. And so I get there. I have decently high
You feel anxiety. You don't have anxiety attacks, but
Right.
that was, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm panicking. I'm a bit anxious. We're a day or two in. We go for a walk around the block. You know, we're staying at his parents' house in 2 separate rooms.
Here's my quick setup.
Very reputable.
Before she sets up the punchline, she had told me 2 months earlier, just so you know, I'm never getting married again. And I'm like, wow, that's intense. And I'm like, okay. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I will respect that. Maybe if she falls in love with me, she'll change her mind, and maybe she won't. Like, either way, I'll respect that. But I am interested enough that I want to see where this goes. So I very respectfully
started marching around the walls of Jericho, hoping they would fall down.
Yeah, blowing my trumpet. But I didn't bring up marriage again because she told me straight up she's never getting married again. And then she's having a panic attack driving down that I didn't know about, and then.
So we're walking around the neighborhood. his dad's neighborhood, and there's a little park, and we stop so my son can play at the park. And I say to you,
very pointedly and kind of upset with me, so why haven't we talked about marriage? And I'm like, I guess we can have this conversation. You said you didn't want to, and you're like, well, I brought my son down to meet you. And so doesn't that show you? I'm like, okay, let's have that conversation.
So that's how marriage became on the table. Communication is really important in relationships, just in case you're wondering.
So we started talking about marriage, and, I said yes when she asked.
I didn't ask.
You put it on the table, and I said yes, and then I formally asked later.
You're so good.
Anyways, but then you pivot to, you need to talk to your son
Right.
and to your ex, because he's going to be in a co-parenting situation now. Tell me about those conversations.
Yeah. Well, and I think in life, in parenting, in relationships, like there are always important conversations that are going to come up. There's always important conversations that you need to have. And so it's more about having the habit of having those conversations. But the way you have the hard conversations is you have the easy conversations regularly, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what's going on in your life. How's your day? What was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day?
You're talking with your son now.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the weirdest part of your day? And just regularly having that connection and that communication. And then when you're having one of your normal conversations, you can bring up one of the harder conversations.
Yeah.
And so my son, his whole life that he's known you, has always called you Jono. Not because he didn't feel close or connected or that you weren't a parent to you.
I've always been a parent, but I'm
Yeah.
not his dad.
Right.
Yeah.
And so having that conversation with him of this is what we're doing, is that something you feel comfortable with? Is that okay with you?
Yeah. And that's a choice he made, by the way, to call me Jono. Because when we were going to have other kids, I said, they're going to call me dad. And he's like, well, I want my Jono to be my Jono and my dad to be my dad. And I'm like, okay. Like
Yeah.
we let him make that call.
Nobody else has a Jono, just him.
Yeah. Well, you have a Jono. What about your ex? Like, how did you...
Yeah, I mean, those conversations, once again, never easy to have, but I always made it a priority to have the important conversations. And so letting them know,
Yeah.
look, this is what we're planning to do. This is when we're planning to do it.
Speaking to having the small regular conversations so that you can have those important conversations, the big ones in the moment. For kids, I think if you've been dating someone for long enough that marriage is on the table, then they're going to get to know that person and they're going to be seeing them regularly. And you might think, well, it's just going to be a natural transition. But those small conversations of this is the person that I'm dating, and now we're talking about marriage, and now we've set a date, and now this, having the kid involved in all of that makes every little pivot easier to make because there's not any big great leap.
Right.
It may not be pleasant to have those conversations, but they're going to happen sooner or later. So it's kind of like a Band-Aid, like do it.
Right.
Because I can think of someone in your family who didn't.
So I have a family member who is getting remarried, and her adult child, one of her adult children, was living in another country, and he was coming home from living in another country. And she didn't tell him she was dating. She didn't tell him she was engaged, and she was getting married like
2 weeks after he got back, 3 weeks after he got back.
maybe 10 days, who knows. And
she kept putting off because she was afraid, or
she just didn't. It was more of a difficult conversation, maybe hard or uncomfortable, or it could bring up something hard or uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Because you need to allow the other person the space to say, well, I don't like this, or this makes me uncomfortable, or I'm not happy with that, right? And it's okay for another person to not like something or be uncomfortable or not be happy.
I don't have to change my major life choices to please somebody, but I am going to show them the respect of telling them and letting them work through it.
Well, and ideally, if there was a problem, there would be talking about solutions together.
Yeah.
Like being seen, heard, and understood, and then saying, okay, I get that, I understand that. What can we do?
Right.
Like to support you in this change.
It's okay for kids to struggle with the transition. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be with this person.
Well, it's all about the balance we talked about, right?
Yeah, it just means I'm not going to pressure the kids to be okay with it, or to make them call this person dad or call this person mom, or this is what's happening, so get with the program. It's what you were saying of it's okay to feel things. It's okay to voice that you're unhappy with it. It's okay to be unhappy with it. That I find that people transition easier if no one's telling them what they have to feel in any
Right.
given moment, that they can allow to have their process. And oftentimes when you're dating post-divorce, especially if you have multiple kids, some kids are on board faster than others, right? And so allowing everybody to have the time that they need and to respect their feelings in that process instead of telling them, this is what you're going to do, and this is what you're going to feel.
Well, and that's an interesting perspective that you bring up, because my parents divorced when I was an adult.
Yeah.
Right?
Because they started dating again, yeah.
Right, because they started dating again. And so for my dad, who was more interested in dating like right away, some men just have to be taken care of.
Yes.
You know, he let us know, like, I'm dating someone and I'm exclusively dating her. And we were like, okay, that's great. And none of us lived in the same town. And so, you know, when he felt like it was a little bit more serious, he was like, I would like you to meet her. And we were like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
And so I would say he did a very good job of like talking to us about what he was doing.
Yeah.
But also we weren't expected to, you know, do anything a certain way or respond
Be
anyway.
super on board or just
Right,
immediately
right.
love her. I mean, everybody loves her, but I wasn't there, but I've heard the stories. Like, it took people time to get used to, oh my gosh, he's got another wife. And
right.
he's, yeah.
So he got remarried first, and it definitely took some of my siblings a decent amount longer to think, oh, my dad, even though they were adults, my dad's now married to someone who's not my mom.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody was just very allowing of that. Right. And very
Yeah.
understanding.
You guys take your time and feel what you got to feel. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, thank you. This has been awesome. There are lots of things about your experience that I already knew, but there are new revelations today, and
All the time.
and hope that this was very helpful for you watching at home.
And it's worth it to recognize that a divorce, no matter how right it is, there are challenges that come along with it. It is so hard. And it's not something that I would wish on my worst enemy. Even if it's the right thing for you, even if it's the right thing for your children, it is so, so challenging. But with those challenges, provide so many opportunities for growth and for empathy and for understanding that give yourself grace, take the judgment out of it for yourself, for your children, and just be understanding.
And to that end, we have a free resource for you. Go to the description. There's a link for our free Hope After Divorce resource where we give you tools to make it through this journey and come out, like you're saying, with
Right.
growth and stronger on the other side. And we also want to invite you to check out this video, Can You Be Traumatized and Not Know It? Little resource for you right there. As always, like, subscribe, click the bell so that you get notified every time that there's a new video. And until next time,
Remember to keep shining. We need your light.
shine, shine, sparkle, sparkle. Oh, here's the sparkly video we were telling you about. It's so shiny. Light it up by clicking on it, and mend it by clicking on it. Mend your clicky light.